Good evening, I'm John Barber. Welcome to the show. This is Kirk Douglas. Nominated 3 times for an Academy Award, Kirk Douglas is one of the few actors who has remained an authentic superstar over 3 decades of filmmaking. He has created careers for Rich Little and Frank Gorshin. His son should do so good. That's coming up right now. Welcome back. I grew up as a young boy going to films, and one of my idols at that time, still was one of my idols, Kirk Douglas. And a night like tonight, when you can have one of your idols as a guest, you would do the show for nothing. And Kirk has seen the show many times, and he says, I should do the show for nothing. So he's doing it for nothing. Kirk, welcome to the show.
Thank you,
it's an absolute thrill.
Yeah, but I don't know that I like that beginning, you know, here. Are you sure you haven't got me confused with my father, who was such a hitting champion?
Kirk, if you were starting out in the business today, would you wish to be an actor again?
You know, I have thought about that quite often, and the way I can answer it is I've always wished. I have 4 sons, and the best thing that I can wish them is that none of them become actors. I'm afraid that in one way or another, all of them will be involved in one way or another with show business, the entertainment
But
world.
your sons certainly have it a whole lot more, a whole lot easier than you
No,
had.
I think on the contrary, John. I think he had it harder. You see, because the spotlight is right on him. It's like when a star tries to direct a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, immediately the spotlight is on him. It's his first movie. Someone else directs a movie, well, then they direct a few more and they get somewhere. Whereas a son, when you think of it, there's quite a few children of stars who have started, never got anywhere. I think the spotlight is put on you. If you can survive it and you have talent, then you're all right. Otherwise, I think it's a tremendous handicap, because I think the handicap is like in Michael's case, and I'm sure the same thing will be in Joel's and in my son Peter's and my young son Eric. They want their own identity.
That may be true, but just the mere fact that he is your son, if he's trying to get a part, and an agent goes in and says, we have Michael Douglas, they say, oh yes, Kirk Douglas' son. But when you were starting as an actor and somebody said, I got a great new kid named Kirk Douglas, who?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the initial contact would be much easier for them, even if it's out of curiosity. But then I think either you have it or you don't. I don't think that keeps you there. But I think you're right. I have to agree that the initial contact could be more easily made if you're the son of someone that they know.
Kirk, we're going to take a commercial break, but when we come back, I want to talk to you about some of your early days trying to make it as an actor, both in Hollywood and on Broadway. We'll be right back after this message. Welcome back. We're talking to Kirk Douglas. Kirk, you, when you were in college, you were a wrestling champion. You were one boy in a family of 6, and your mother and father were Russian immigrants. Yeah. When did you decide?
I had 6 sisters, by the way.
Well, when did you decide you were going to become an actor? And then when you changed your name, what was the reaction of your mother and father?
Well, you see, first of all, my mother and father were Russian immigrants. They literally couldn't read or write. I mean, to them, they didn't know college, whatever you want, son. I think I first wanted to become an actor when I was in the 1st grade. they had a little program with the kindergarten, the first grade, and the second grade, and I recited a poem about the Red Robin of Spring, and everybody applauded. And I liked that sound, and I think I've been singing it out ever since.
When did you change your name?
Well, my original name was Issa Danilovich, which if I were going to be a dancer would have been a great name. I changed the name during my junior year at college. I was working in the summer stock company. And by the way, Carl Malden, who works with my son Michael, was in that stock company. As a matter of fact, his name was Mladen Sekulovic. My name is Issa Danilovich, and we talked about changing names, and it was during that year that I took on the name of Kirk Douglas.
But while you were still in school, which must have been so precious for your parents to see, you know, their son going to an American school, and all of a sudden you change your name. It must have been a shock.
I don't think, well, I mean, when you say change a name, that didn't mean anything until I started to work later on. I left college, I went to New York and started my professional career. I mean, from the point of view, you know, when my parents came over here, in those days, you went to Ellis Island, somebody put a tag on you. I remember the story they tell that one of my father's brothers came over to the town. All right, the family name was Danilovich. He bought a little shoe repair shop that was owned by a man named Greenwald. And over the shop, it said Greenwald. So he bought the shop. A man came in the next day and said, "You own the shop?" But yeah, he said, "Mr. Greenwald." And to this day, his whole family's name is Greenwald. So what's in a name? A rose by any other name?
Well, when you started as an actor, Kirk, were there financial pressures on you?
Well, of course. I was the typical, you know, Horatio Alger story. I always sort of am reluctant to tell it because I always feel suddenly I turn around and violins are going to be playing. But at that time it was a typical American story of kids, poor immigrants, you know, not enough to eat. I can remember my first Thanksgiving in New York. I was down in the Bowery in a line trying to get a meal from the Salvation Army. They gave me a chit to get my meal, and by the time I got there, they ran out of meals, so I didn't have anything to eat. But the next Thanksgiving, I remember I was at Catherine Cornell's house. Tallulah Bankhead was there. We were all sipping champagne, and as my mother would say, America is such a wonderful land.
Did you think you belonged in the company of Catherine Cornell?
Absolutely. Noblesse oblige, John.
Well,
seriously, I didn't. I was really gaga. I thought, I couldn't believe it. It was really like a fairy tale.
Well, were you after a career for the money, or were you after a career for the applause that you had heard in the first grade?
Very, very honestly, all my early life, all I thought about, in a sense, I feel that I'm a failure because my whole aim was to be a star on the New York stage. And the early invitations that I had to come to Hollywood to do a movie, I turned them down. And when I finally came to Hollywood to do my first picture, it was out of desperation. I was flat broke. My son Michael was an infant then, and I had to make some money.
Were you so preoccupied with making money and succeeding at that time that perhaps you didn't talk to people and approach people in a more human way?
John, that's a very, very pertinent question because that's something that I've talked to my children. You see, in our profession, I think it's so intense that it's true of most actors. You become obsessed with your career that very often you don't enjoy the moment. You know, I've said to Michael, now that he's produced this One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I said, Michael, enjoy the moment. Because when I look back, I think of pictures that have been, you know, after a Champion and after, you know, Detective Story
Paths of Glory
and Bad. A lot of pictures that were big hits, but I was so intent on the next picture that I never really enjoyed the moment. So when I look back, I feel robbed that I didn't have the, whatever it took, the inner security or whatever was lacking within me to enjoy that moment. And I think that's tremendously important. And I tell my 4 sons that. If something happens that's good, enjoy it. Because I think I robbed myself of many wonderful moments in my life that way.
As a result of having that drive, did you ever think that perhaps that maybe you pushed others beside you to the point where perhaps they didn't like Kirk Douglas?
Oh, John, you're being so gentle. I've heard you give reviews and you're so rough. What you're saying is, for example, Hedda Hopper once after Champion said to me, you know, Kirk, She says, I don't know, I thought you were a nice guy, she says, but ever since the Champion, she says, you've become a real SOB. I said, no, Hetty, you're wrong. I was an SOB before Champion, but you didn't notice. But the truth of the matter is, I think that, well, I still don't think I'd win any popularity contest because as much as I would demand of myself, I would demand of others. In putting it in advice I've given to my kids, I've often said so many times, I was right, I would be wrong because of the way I put it. Now, if you start to blow your stack about something, you start to yell, you're wrong even if you're right. And I think that's very often, I was so intense when I would be making films that very often I'd be arguing with the director, and I never had that wonderful quality that I admire in other people. I always thought, gee, I'd love to be a father who sits back and smokes his pipe and talks in a low voice to his children. I'd say, now listen, kids, now, you know, so
you sound just like,
some of those imitations.
You sound just like Rich Little. Let's take a commercial break. We'll be right back after this message.
You all set, Bert?
Put your money where your teeth are.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Limousines for some of the guests are furnished by London Town Livery Service of Beverly Hills, the ultimate in limousine service.
Kirk, as a father, you must have done something right, because I've had one brief encounter with Michael, and I've talked to Peter a couple of times on the phone, and they really sound like they're both altogether young men. Now, as an actor, once you became the superstar and could go back to Broadway, didn't you acquire One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Yeah, well, you see, as I said, I was a failure. I wanted to be a real Broadway star, so I kept looking around for years, turning down scripts until I could come back with something special. And I read the book when it first came out of Ken Kesey's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and I thought, this is it. I bought it. I had a play made from the book done by Dale Wasserman, and I went to Broadway to do it, and I kind of felt an indifferent reaction from the critics. They sort of, so what? And I ran the play for about 5 months. Gene Wilder was in it. It was brilliant. William Daniels. I enjoyed it, but I did say to my wife when it was over, I said, honey, one day they'll realize this is a classic and they don't know it yet. And so I'm delighted to see how it has developed since then. I tried to do it, you know, make a movie out of it for about 10 years. I came close. I had deals. The deals fell through until finally my son Michael, who had always loved the project and said, Dad, don't ever let it go, finally said, Dad, let me take the project. So I said, and he took it over, and I must say I'm very proud of him because he didn't do it with the studio. He found someone, Saul Zant, rather, the head of Fantasy Records, now Fantasy Films. They put up the money. They got 2 good writers. They got Jack Nicholson, who gives a brilliant performance.
Oh, he's fantastic.
And they made what I think is one of the, I think is going to be a historical film. I think it's really, to me, really exciting, and having been so close to it and yet thinking that they've done such a good job, I think is a good criterion.
Well, let's first of all take a look at this one scene. This is the basketball scene.
Oh yeah, that's a wonderful scene, the basketball scene.
You watch it over, you watch it on this monitor.
Okay.
Here, up, raise your hands up, up, that's it, up, all the way up, all the way up, that's a baby, all right, huh? Okay, now jump up in the air and put it in the basket, Chief. Jump up and dunk it in. Jump up in the air and stuff that in there, Chief. Take a rest, Chief. Just stay right there, take a rest, I'll be right back. Oh, Vancini, come here a minute. You're looking all right. Get right over here for a second. Now, just stand right there. Just get down a little bit. All right, stand up. Stand up. Go ahead. Whoop, that's a baby. All right, you got her. All right, now over there. Wait. Hit me, Chief. I got the moves. I got him, Chief. All right, hold it right there. Give me the ball. Give me the ball. That's it. Thank you, Chief. Now, hold it right there. Now. Take the ball, you jump up, and put it in the basket. See what I mean? Just put it. Mancini, hold still. All right, Chief. Here, take the ball. Now, jump up and put her in the basket, Chief. Huh? Jump up and put her in the basket. Not you, Mancini. Raise up, Mancini. Where are you going? No. Fast break. Defense. Get back. Back. Yeah. Come on, Mancini. Where the you going at? General, get this man around here. That's it. Back. Over to Chief. Fast break. Fast break. Hit me, Chief.
Have to go into.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's a fantastic scene. Let's take some calls. Hi, this is John. Welcome to the show. Your question to Kirk.
Yes, this has to do with his son and Carl Malden on the streets of San Francisco. I was curious to know that if the relationship that comes across on the screen is the same as off the screen.
Well, that's a very perceptive question, because it is true. I think off the screen, as well as in Streets of San Francisco, Carl has a sort of paternal feeling toward Michael, and I think that's what makes their relationship so good. Yes, they do have that feeling off the screen. They have a great affection for each other.
Does he sometimes go to Carl for advice rather than you?
Well, I don't know if Michael goes to anyone for advice. Michael's very much his own man, and he really thinks things out himself.
Thank you so much for the call.
Did he,
I beg your pardon, ma'am?
Was Mr. Malden there when Michael grew up?
No,
Around him?
no. No, as a matter of fact, I hadn't seen Carl for years, so he really didn't know Michael at all until they started working together in the Streets of San Francisco.
Thank you so much for the call. Hi, this is John. Welcome to the show. Your question to Kirk.
Hi, John. I really don't have a question. I just wanted to say that I'm a big fan of Mr. Douglas's and have been for many years. I'd
Thank
like
you.
to know, does he ever offer his son Michael any advice on his performance?
Well, as a matter of fact, that's an interesting question. My son, when he first went to the University of California at Santa Barbara, was going to be a lawyer. And suddenly in his sophomore year, he said, Dad, I'm going to be in a play. Would you come up and see it? He had a bit part in Shakespeare's As You Like It. I went up to see it. After it was over, he said to me, what do you think? I said, you were terrible. And I really thought he was awful. He said, oh? I said, Michael, I couldn't hear you. You were mumbling, and I thought that I had destroyed that career and he'd be a lawyer. But then 2 months later, he said, I have another part in a play. I went up. After it was over, he said, what do you think, Dad? And I had to admit, he was wonderful. He was very good. Since then, he kept working in plays and ended up winning the Best Acting Prize as well as the Best Directing Prize.
Did you tell him he was terrible, Kirk, because you were being honest or because you really wanted him to be a lawyer?
Well, I wanted him to be a lawyer, but I was honest. He was terrible.
Let's take another call. Hi, this is John. Welcome to the show. Your question to Kirk.
Yes, John, this is Francine Goodbody, and I'd like to ask Kurt a couple of questions, if you don't mind. No, we used to call him from the old ladies' home. We call him the old Cliff.
The old cleft, what?
Whatever you want to call him, he's got it on his chin. You know, he looks so cute for us old folks here at the home.
Wait a second.
Well,
For us old folks here at the home, he's sort of our elderly Elvis Presley is what he is, you know. And
Well,
that's what we think.
I don't believe that's who it was. There's nobody. I mean, that was a very bad imitation of an old person. Was that Michael again?
probably. Probably. But when I first started in movies, you know, they tried to cover this up. They said they covered up. I think it took too much putty to cover it up. They decided it would be too expensive.
Right now, it looks like Cher's navel. Let's take a break. We'll be right back after this message.
John Barber's Wardrobe, furnished by Tri-Mount Clothing Company, manufacturers of Clippercraft clothes.
Why is that?
I think it's the insecurity of the profession.
Kirk and I were talking during the commercial break, and I had asked him if he had many friends now, people, actors or actresses that he'd worked with, and he said, no. What was your relationship like with Burt Lancaster?
Well, Burt and I, they always thought these two will never get along. As a matter of fact, we did about 5 movies, and we get along very well. I've always enjoyed working with Burt. We'd fight and argue, and I remember when we were doing Gunfight at the OK Corral on location, every night after dinner, Burt and I would talk for hours, and Hal Wallace, who was the producer, once said, Kirk, what do you and Burt find to talk about every night? But you know, if you enjoy somebody, you always find
our dentists
something to talk about.
I must have seen Paths of Glory 7 times. That film is an absolute gem.
Yeah, I still think it's the best movie that Stanley Kubrick has directed. I think he did a brilliant job in that, and I still think it's...
Would you like to do another movie with Kubrick? Because the one thing that I admire about him as a director...
All he has to do is ask me.
Well, I hope he does, because the one thing about Kubrick's films is they are never the same. The style and the treatment. I mean, Alfred Hitchcock has made the same movie, although brilliantly, made the same movie for all those years.
Right after Paths of Glory, you know, Stanley Kubrick was working with Marlon Brando for a year on One-Eyed Jacks. Marlon Brando fired him, and that weekend I hired him to direct Spartacus.
Kirk, I want to thank you so much for being here.
John, I've enjoyed it. Really have.
Thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your calls. Tomorrow night, Los Angeles Rams quarterback James Harris. See you then. Good night. Good luck.